Hi, this is Bruce Rawles, and I'm speaking with C.A. Brooks, who a fellow course student who I've been having conversations with for many years and enjoying them all. And after a short hiatus, we're back again talking about A Course in Miracles, our favorite topic.
Hey,
So
Bruce, it's great to be with you today.
thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Yes. And we thought we'd talk about the word through in A Course in Miracles and how that relates to the idea that we allow Spirit, aka Holy Spirit, to work through us rather than trying to brute force and figure things out on our own. And so there's plenty
Well,
of
why would
material.
we do that when working things on our own works so well? I've had incredible success with that, Bruce.
Thank you for starting out with a joke. That's always good to put it in perspective. Yeah, really. Yeah,
Resign as your own teacher.
exactly.
You've been badly taught.
Exactly. That actually reminds me of another fairly short joke that it's about this linguistics professor who travels the world, and his specialty is in double negatives and certain figures of speech. And he says he's traveled all over the world. He tells his class one day he's traveled all over the world looking for different forms of double negatives, and he's in pretty much every language he's found them. And he says, but in all his research, he wasn't able to find any instances of a double positive that meant a negative. The double negative means a positive, but he said he couldn't find any. And he says because there aren't any double positives that make a negative. And he asked his class, he says, help me find one, because I don't think there are any. And in fact, he says, I'm sure there aren't any. And then at that point, a voice from the back of the room chimes in, yeah, right. So that's
There you go.
in response to your question of, well, that's working out great for me, is yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
which doesn't mean that we should be cynical about the course. It just means that when we listen to the ego is really the only cynical voice in our head. And that's the voice that really questions the Holy Spirit's sanity, while having no sanity for itself. And I think that's why the course's aim, it seems like, is gradually leading us to that place in the mind where we recognize, as you were saying humorously, it just hasn't worked when we try to follow ego's advice.
Yep. But it doesn't seem to stop us from trying.
Well, no.
We are incredibly persistent.
We are.
Speaking for myself.
Yeah, we've given it a good run. And I think, but I think in some part of our mind, we can sort of guess that maybe the ego's days are numbered in terms of, the total amount of permutations of its insanity that we have yet to try.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I found a place in the very last part of the manual for teachers. It's number 29, called As for the Rest, that is right before the clarification of terms.
Okay.
And I thought I'd start with paragraph 2, sentence 2, and then we could take turns reading paragraphs here and talking about them.
Okay.
But the gist of it is as our beloved teacher Ken Wapnick points out, is in we're talking about the manual, what the intent of the manual for teachers is, which, and we're all students and we're all teachers all the time, 24/7. I always like to bring in that perspective and that foundation. It really is, the manual, Ken says, is really about two things. One is shared interest, and realizing that we all have the same interest of waking up from the dream of separation. And the other is, in order to achieve that, we're all moving gradually and inexorably toward implicitly trusting the Holy Spirit with all of our decisions about how to think about anything. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with behavior or anything on the level of form, but always on the level of mind. How should I see this other person, this politician, this family member, this driver that just cut me off on the freeway, this, fill in the blanks with whatever seems to be crossing our path at any moment, right? And so anyway, the impetus for trusting Holy Spirit more and more I think is outlined beautifully in this section called As the Rest. So I'll read I'll start with the second sentence here.
Okay.
Who would profit more from prayers alone? Who needs but a smile, being as yet unready for more? And that kind of alludes to the enormous resistance we all have that we're all learning to let go of. No one should attempt to answer these questions alone. Surely no teacher of God has come this far without realizing that. The curriculum is highly individualized, and all aspects are under Holy Spirit's particular care and guidance. Ask and he will answer. The responsibility is his, and he alone is fit to assume it. To do so is his function. To refer the questions to him is yours. Would you want to be responsible for decisions about which you understand so little? There's a clue there. Be glad you have a teacher who cannot make a mistake. His answers are always right. Would you say that of yours? And just right off the bat, I think before we started the recording, you mentioned the sort of that, how's that working out for you question of, in the admonition in the course, the gentle suggestion that maybe we might want to resign as our own teacher. And then elsewhere it says we've been badly taught by the ego, of course. Yeah. Any comments on that so far?
Just that it's, in so many ways, it's just so profound. And it's also mildly depressing. If only because, like when it said, would you say that of yours? And it kind of goes back to maybe what we kind of alluded to. Why is it so hard, when you've got this mountain of evidence that your decisions have not been that great, or what you're doing does not make you feel great, like you do, you're mean to a person, or somebody does something and you say, okay, I'll do you one better, so to speak, and you don't feel great about it. How many times, why is it that we can go through that literally hundreds and thousands of times and not get it? And yet somewhere it does say your tolerance for pain is high, but it's not limitless. And I keep hoping for that, because, you do all these things, you think, okay, I'm like in the flow. I feel like, I'm asking the right questions, and hey, hand this over to Jesus or whatever, or at least consult, do whatever the methodology is that seems to be working or there. And then in a flash, it goes away. I mean, just in a flash, somebody does something that I insist I have to retaliate for. And then afterwards, I'm like, why? I can't hardly even catch myself. So looking at this, it's just that reminder, especially like even in the manual, I don't remember the number, but how to give up judgment. And it's always amazed me. I mean, once again, I just laughed when I first read it, when it said, give up judgment, not because you're not supposed to do it, but because you're not good at it.
And it's actually impossible. And I think it even
says,
yeah.
So once again, it's saying, here's another teacher, here's a guide that does know all the answers. And so that's why I say it's mildly depressing, because how many times do I have to hear that? How many times do I have to hear that before I'll believe it?
Yeah, and I think every time we kind of metaphorically pick up our sword and our shield, the sword of condemnation and the shield of guilt, it's like, why am I doing this battle again? Why? Yeah. And I think the trick seems like it's, again, the descriptions of the form may vary widely, but it's always something along the lines of mindfully noticing when the inner saboteur is at work and is saying, okay, you're getting too close to peace here. I better, in order to preserve this separate self, I better, act fast and react in some defensive way, or offensive way, as the case may be. Either way works. And when we catch ourselves doing that, it's like, but I'm not peaceful. And then it's like, okay, how do I invoke those rules for decision again and make that a habit? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and along the lines of remembering that if it's all an illusion, one illusion is not bigger or fatter or better then another one. And sometimes I catch myself, it's easy with smaller stuff to just go, really, does it matter if it's red or green? And I can catch myself and say, wow, how important is this really? But when it's a bigger thing that really taps into an emotional or a psychological issue or pain, it's much harder to say this doesn't matter. That this is an illusion and one answer is as good as another. And yet intellectually, I know that I really do believe that. I really believe anything times zero is zero. An illusion is an illusion. It doesn't matter how strong it feels, it's still an illusion. But when it's right in your face, or somebody's in pain or I'm in pain, then it's like, how that's it. How do you reach for that answer? And yet you have to.
Yeah. And every time we do, it furthers the conviction, doesn't it? I mean, it really does, deepen the not only conviction, but I think also the sensitivity to the actual the pain and the discomfort and the lack of ease or dis-ease, if you want to call it that, of choosing the belief in separation. And choosing that whole thought system that says that we pulled this off, and the whole thought system is unconscious but unfounded. Sin, guilt, and fear is alive and well in my mind, and when we go there, it's like, that doesn't feel good. It just so that turning up the sensitivity on that, so to speak, is turning that knob up and say, okay, if I can just catch this a little quicker each time, instead of years or months, maybe I can get it down. Some of the bigger things, get it down to weeks, where the forgiveness option seems to hold some merit. Or if for the little things, maybe instead of weeks or days, maybe it could be hours or even minutes, before even seconds, before with practice we say, well, what if I could forgive myself for projecting this? And usually it doesn't start with that. Usually it starts with, what if I can forgive the other person or the other group or the other situation for messing up my peace of mind today? And but then I think, again, with a lot of practice, we begin to realize, oh, well, that upset is not out there. It's the setup is in my mind, and I set it up, and I can choose a different teacher that will unset it up. Well, we'll see that setup was house of cards.
Well, and one thing I'm finding is sometimes it seems like such a mountain to climb to get to that place. And so I just back off and I go, okay, could you help me just be a little more willing to be willing?
Yeah.
And that seems doable. And I'm going, okay, I'm just gonna try to be more willing. Can you just help me be more willing to go there? And so when I kind of back it off into a smaller step, instead of just going, make me peaceful or make me kind or make me whatever, it's like, because that's just not going to happen. But like you say, just even that little tiny piece, of recognizing it makes you unhappy and trying to address it. But yeah, just like even today, I practically threw something at the TV. I was listening, there was some kind of coverage, and then they switched, to the nomination or, the hearings for the new Supreme Court justice. And they said, now we're going to hear from blankety blank. I said, oh, no, we're not. And like off went the TV. And I thought, see, that was like enough to just really set me off, but but at least I recognize I can't keep with equanimity. I just can't listen to it and be that way. I wish I could, but I can't. Not yet.
Well, the course does say that it's an inevitable change, but we certainly have a tendency to procrastinate, and
yes,
even though we know that's actually what we want ultimately. Like you say, intellectually we get it, but it's the practice that's the lab assignment, if you will. The theory class we've probably either aced, or at least we get a passing grade in, but the lab, oh man, how much of the day am I really listening to that guidance? We're all working on it. We're all working on it. That's probably an accurate statement.
Yeah.
even those that we think are hopeless. And like you say, it can be pretty depressing when we look at the extent of our projections and realize, oh my gosh, I'm putting a pretty big trip on a lot of people without even realizing that I'm imposing those same restrictions on myself.
Yeah. Well, and that's it, kind of goes back to the intellectual part of it. If we're talking intellectually, I can believe we all want the same things.
Yeah.
It is all shared interest.
Absolutely.
I know that intellectually.
Yeah.
But then when I see the way people act out, then it's harder for me to just be generous or kind or non-judgmental. It's a real trick to do that. And yet I would also say sometimes when people are acting out the most, I almost want to laugh, and I hope I'm not laughing at them, but it's such a description of the little ego.
Yeah.
The little ego just going, give it to me, I have to do this, or I have to puff myself up. And it seems so blatantly obvious. And then I go, okay, can you see this? This is just that little kid who thinks they are missing out, that wants love. That's all that person is doing. And sometimes I can do that.
Yeah, sometimes the obvious tyrants and the childish, petulant behavior that the course talks about. It's always and only about the mind, as we keep reminding ourselves, but the behavior in the mind that is obviously, what I call tantrum yoga sometimes.
Yeah.
just practicing those attacks in more and more diverse and subtle ways. But it's when we catch the real blatant examples, whether it's a political figure on TV or it's someone in our own household or coworker or whatever, it doesn't really matter if that helps us get in touch with that part of the mind that says, oh, that's something that I have some responsibility for, and I can choose how I feel about what I see going on right now. And in fact, what I see is really a reflection of a choice I've made previously.
Well, like that line that says, the secret of salvation is you're doing this unto yourself. That's something that pops into my mind too.
Yeah.
Because I'm going, this is your classroom. You are doing this unto yourself. And so what is the purpose? Yeah. Because that's another thing about the course that I love, is that just always going back to, what's the purpose? Yep. What is the purpose here?
Yeah.
And just continuing to ask that question. What is the purpose? What was the purpose here? And you kind of get to it. It's like, not a good one, that's for sure.
Yeah. When we
not a good one.
Are honest with ourselves and say, okay, I was trying to fight, and I wanted the fight, and that's okay. The course doesn't suggest that there's anything wrong with attack. It just says that it's never justified.
That's right. It's never justified.
which of course can make our egos even angrier at times. But when we in our moments of exhaustion from trying to keep that insane struggle going, if we just have a little bit of willingness to admit, like, well, that isn't working, as we were talking about earlier, it's like, then we might begin to question more frequently. And I think what you were saying kind of reminds me of another thing in the beginning of chapter 30, right before the rules for decision. There's a line that's been really helpful to me lately, and that's, do not fight yourself. And that if I can, if I'm trying to force myself to be forgiving or do whatever that lets go of a condemning thought or whatever, if I'm set on that, it's probably not going to help to try to force myself. But just if I can just watch that thought, the part that's watching it isn't the thought system. And especially if I can watch without condemnation, then I'm, as Ken Walkman points out, then I'm almost there.
Yeah.
And just to say, oh, there I go again. I must have been afraid of the peace and the loving kindness that's behind this special love-hate relationship I have with, fill in however long a blank you need to describe all the events of your day.
Yes.
Certainly most of them in most people's lives, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and what it kind of reminded me of, I've had several incidents in my life many of them recent, where I was charging forward like a locomotive. And boy, I was doing this. And it wasn't something that was necessarily right or wrong, but I was just charging forward.
Yeah.
And something just abruptly stopped me. And I had no choice but to stop. And usually, like right away, I realized, oh my God, that was the wrong thing. I was going to do something that was the wrong turn. That was the wrong decision. That was whatever. And I just couldn't see it. And then I kind of look around because it almost feels like magically the Holy Spirit did just like put his hand out and go, you stop, you know. Now, I don't know that it's the Holy Spirit, but when those things happen, it's a good reminder spiritually, I think, that when I feel so headstrong, you know, yeah, because I think I've got all the information. And just like this said, you don't have all the information. You don't have all the answers. And so why are you so adamant about what you think you're about to do? Because you know, can you just remember that? Can you just remember that you often don't have the answers, and it's okay to then be turned to the side? But when I get, like I said, I feel fortunate that I've had some situations where literally I got stopped. And when I realized what could have happened, it was like, I mean, none of them were like fatal or anything like that, but they were serious mistakes. And it's like, wow, I do feel like, I don't know if it's somebody looking out for me. I don't know if I want to go that far, but that's what it feels like. Some part of me went, wow, what are you doing? You know? And I guess I'd like to think that that's the Holy Spirit. I don't know if it is or not. Maybe that is that little willingness going, you said you kind of wanted some help. Are you serious? Because if you are, stop right now.
Bob Newhart therapy. Stop it.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yep.
I remember that. Just stop it. Yeah.
Just stop it. Yeah. And you know, oftentimes we don't do it immediately, but you know, like you say, we get guidance and we have that inspiration sometimes to just say, well, what if I'm barking up the wrong tree here and
Yeah.
charging down the wrong path? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. And it's okay to go, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there again, embracing maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is another way to do this.
There must be a better way. I actually read that before we started the recording. You were talking about a book that reminded, well, a book that I've been rereading that I read a better part of a half century ago, actually, Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. And in it, there he meets with these, what would be called, I guess, ascended masters who really are talking about, you know, the Christ mind and everything. And that phrase jumped out at me, and right a few pages before the end of the first volume of these 5 volumes. And it says, eventually man will realize that there must be a better way. And I thought, where have I heard that before?
Yeah, really.
and essentially, and the answer to that was, you know, choosing the mind of Christ, choosing the Holy Spirit, choosing that guidance. And I thought, well, that seemed appropriate. So I'm going to probably put that quote
Now,
on.
have you ever seen the movie Lost Horizon?
I have, yeah, a long time ago, yeah. And
long time ago?
And there's actually two versions of it. There's
there are?
There's the original version, and that came out, I think, decades ago.
1937.
Yeah, and then there's the Bill Murray remake of it.
Oh.
Who did a great job with it. Well, no, excuse me, not was it Lost Horizon? I'm thinking of The Razor's Edge. It's similar kind of storyline where he goes to the Himalayas and I'm conflating those two movies. Yeah.
I haven't seen The Razor's Edge. But...
Okay, yeah, that's the movie that has the two versions. Yeah. But I did see the other one too. The
Lost Horizon.
Lost Horizon. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to see it because in Ken's books on kindness, he specifically mentions some of the text from the book Lost Horizon.
Okay.
In which
You're right.
The whole idea of Shangri-La is this awareness that there is a place where we can be at peace. There is a place that we can live happily and successfully. And as he said, the people don't age because there is no struggle, because we're not struggling against anything. But the reason I bring it up is because, like I said, I'd always wanted to see it because Ken referenced it, but I saw it. And quite honestly, I was I was a little disappointed, But the way it comes into this is, as you would suspect, these people are in a plane crash and they're taken to Shangri-La. And it turns out that was very purposeful. But the point is, the way they all deal with it, there's like 5 of them, and they are not happy to be there. But eventually a few of them realize, hey, this is really better than where I came from. But a few are like, they're determined they have to leave. They got to get out of this horrible place. And you recognize, I mean, we do the same thing. And sometimes you're with a person, or you're in a situation where you realize somebody is just arguing for something dark or something that's not very much fun, when you've kind of showed them it could be another way. But peace isn't always that attractive.
Right.
But I think the disappointing part, which I, didn't recognize because I didn't know the story, is that one of the guys who did recognize it, in fact, he was a pivotal character. The Lama had actually, wanted him to come and take his place. But this guy, because his brother wanted to leave, against all his better judgment, he left, which meant that you had to go through this very scary, dangerous mountain pass, which they do. And the brother and the other woman that went, they both were killed. And this guy almost loses his life, but he's rescued. But then, of course, he escapes from the hospital and he goes back to Shangri-La, once again at great peril. But I was so disappointed when he was leaving, because it's like your brother, who the whole movie has made bad decisions. You're going to go with the guy who made all the bad decisions when you found Shangri-La. But it reminded me, yeah, that's what I do in my life.
We all have done it. Exactly,
but I was like, don't go. What are you doing? I mean, I wanted him to be my hero. I wanted him to say, you know what? I love you, to his brother. Yeah. But you made bad decisions. You're going to continue to make bad decisions. If you want to leave, you leave, but I'm going to stay here. But he didn't. He went with his brother.
I wonder how, just a rhetorical question that this brings to mind is how much media we consume is completely cringeworthy in terms of watching people knowing full well that they're going to choose against their best interest,
Yes.
Yeah.
But when
that, like you say, that's what we all do when we choose ego. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, it also made me think how often I will do something, I mean, for the sake of a love of a person, just like he did. He did it because he loved his brother, and he didn't think his brother could make it if he didn't go with him. Now, the truth is his brother couldn't make it anyway. But in fact, his brother ended up kind of throwing himself off the side of a cliff. I mean, like I said, his brother was kind of a dark character who was unable to find happiness. But I think about that too sometimes. Do I make choices that I think aren't the right decisions? And it's not coming from, going back to what we're talking about, this whole idea of being guided by love or letting spirit move through you. It's wanting to please somebody else who is important to me. And so I will go along with them, even when all my best judgment says this isn't the right thing to do. And yet, here again, and maybe I'm making this more complicated, in A Course in Miracles, there is a passage where it even says, if somebody says, go this way, go with them. I mean, I don't remember where that is, but that always kind of surprised me when it's like, yeah, they ask you to do this crazy stuff. Go ahead, because it doesn't matter. It's an illusion.
It's funny that, again, that doesn't matter. That is the line that Bill Murray uses. A few months ago, my wife and I were watching a bunch of Bill Murray stuff on the web. We found 2 movies. One was this Razor's Edge remake. And the other was, I think it was called Meatballs. It was where he coaches a little league team. And in both movies, he uses the line, "It just doesn't matter." and in the kids sports team one, the kids are having this horrible losing streak, and he's trying to coach them, kind of like Ted Lasso. If you've seen any of those episodes, it's like it's an Apple TV show that we're also watching and having. It's kind of an optimistic character, but in this case, Bill Murray's realization is that the kids need to be just motivated to have fun and enjoy the process, rather than have their happiness appendage to winning or losing. And so he just says, it just doesn't matter. And he has them all chanting, it just doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
And at the end of this remake of the Razor's Edge movie, he goes off to find himself, in the Himalayas and Asia. And when he comes back, the woman that he'd hoped to marry has just, basically given up on him and has married someone else. And a friend asked him, well, are you heartbroken about this? And he realized that his peace isn't necessarily, it doesn't depend on that particular relationship coming to work out that way. And he says the same line. He goes through some soul searching to get to that point, but he realizes, he says, it just doesn't matter. And I think that's the kind of equivalent to the stop it therapy of Bob Newhart, is realizing that my ego's ranting and ravings just don't matter. And if I can remember that a little more quickly each time, over time, I'll want to drop the fight. I'll want to drop the sword and the shield and get back to the above the battleground place in my mind.
Yeah, which to me has always been a great analogy, holding that sword above my head, because sometimes I even feel it in my body. It's so heavy.
Oh yeah.
And could I just lay it down? Could I just not be that person who has to correct everybody else?
We expend enormous
for 5
effort.
minutes. Could I do that?
Really? Yeah, we harness more energy than all the hydroelectric dams on the planet, and a few nuclear power plants added in. I'm sure just maintaining the idea that we have it figured out,
Yeah. And when they talk about, if you could just understand or imagine what the heaviness is and what it would feel like to just lay it down.
Yeah.
If you could just know that, then you would just be shocked. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but that's it. Could you just imagine what it feels like to lay down that burden of judgment just for a few minutes? And when I hear that, it's like, I can feel it. I can feel my shoulders literally like coming down, like, yes, because I'm just sitting here, waiting to catch somebody or whatever. And it's like, yeah, why can't we just do that? Why can't we remember that? The resistance is incredible.
And like you say, forgiving the resistance is important too. I was attending some workshops by a friend named Leonard Laska who knew about the course, but that wasn't his primary focus. But he would teach these wonderful forgiveness workshops. And a lot of times people would say, well, I'm not ready to forgive person X, Y, or Z, let alone A, B, or C. But he said, well, how about if you work on the resistance to the forgiveness? And I thought that was a pretty cool insight. Yeah, it's just forgive yourself for having the resistance.
Right.
And I think that's very much aligned with the course's metaphysics and the approach it takes of just having us look at our minds, seeing our enormous amount of foot dragging that we do, and we keep rechaining ourselves to the the anchors that keep us stuck consistently, because we're afraid to walk out of the jail. We want the door to be locked. And
right.
Holy Spirit keeps saying, hey, look, if you walk over this way, you see it's actually not locked. In fact, it's actually open a little bit. And in fact, you could actually kind of slip right through if you wanted to. From the right angle.
Yeah, but once again, that's a great analogy, because I think, even as a child, how often I preferred to make something really difficult just to prove that I was right. And when it was obvious something else was going to be more fun, or something else was going to be easier. And, so I think I was ripe for A Course in Miracles my whole life because of that, because I recognize it's like, why do you have to make this so hard? And it's like, because I do. Yeah. I just do. And I don't know any other way. And
I don't think you're alone in that. I think in a sense, the Course is saying we're all, variations of that same little belligerent little cuss that wants to do it my way. Yeah. Instead of allowing ourselves to be guided. Yeah. Should we go back to the this reading? Do you want to read?
Yeah. I read paragraph 2. You want me to read 3?
Sure. And okay. That the last sentence to me is just, or a couple of sentences to me is the bingo moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 3 is there is another advantage, and a very important one, in referring decisions to the Holy Spirit with increasing frequency. Perhaps you have not thought of this aspect, but its centrality is obvious. To follow the Holy Spirit's guidance is to let yourself be absolved of guilt. It is the essence of atonement. It is the core of the curriculum. The imagined usurping of functions not your own is the basis of fear. The whole world you see reflects the illusion that you have done so, making fear inevitable. To return the function to the one to whom it belongs is thus the escape from fear. And it is this that lets the memory of love return to you. Do not then think that following the Holy Spirit's guidance is necessary merely because of your own inadequacies. It is the way out of hell for you. Yeah, that's powerful.
Isn't that potent? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I picture, we're all kind of groping around blindfolded in a dark cave, with basically zero faculties to navigate properly. Holy Spirit's, got this flashlight or lantern or whatever, and sees all the pitfalls and all the bottomless pits and chutes and staircases and well, probably not too many staircases in most caves, but you get the idea. but the Holy Spirit sees where to go to get us out of the cave, and whether Plato's allegory or otherwise, and so we need that help. At every step of the way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and this is great because it does put it right back to, this isn't handing over your responsibility. This is giving back what you never had.
Exactly.
This wasn't, I love that word usurp, because it's like you took something, it didn't belong to you. This wasn't for you in the beginning. So yeah, I really like that. Just the whole world you see reflects the illusion that you have done so, making fear inevitable.
Yeah.
Boy, if that isn't the truth.
Yeah.
And to escape it, you have to return it to where it belongs. And I don't know why this popped into my head, but it does, because it just goes back along with this. I am forever, I don't know, I never was good at geometry. And yet I'm an astrologer. Go figure. But I think the reason is because geometry was somehow based on spatial concepts. I needed somebody to write it down and show me right in front of me. Don't tell me that, like 2 dots make a line, because that doesn't make any sense to me. I need to see it. But forever, when I look at tools, like simple tools in a toolbox, and I'm trying to think what this one is called, but the one that has, I think it's called a wrench. It's like this. And you use it to loosen nuts. Well, forever, I would put it like this. And somebody would say, you need to turn it around. And so I would turn the whole tool around and still be doing this. And they're like, no, you need to turn it. And I'm like, I did turn it, so then I'm
different
flipping
axis.
it over.
Yeah.
And finally somebody said, you need to lay it flat. You need to come at it like this. But it's amazing how you can look at that and try it over and over and over and not see what is right in front of your face. And somehow on this, it just struck me that, you kind of go through these shenanigans of making everything really difficult because you can't just see the obvious.
Yeah.
And we don't, I could just see that in front of my face, how many times I've done that with a tool. And they always say you have to turn it around, but turning it around isn't quite the right phrase. They need to give me a little more concrete about how to use a tool, Yeah.
I think we're all in that same boat in different ways, because we all have these inadequacies that the course is talking about, because we're trying to, use our mind, the tool, in an inappropriate fashion. I mean, to generalize what you just said. Yeah. We're taking this enormous potential that we have, and to achieve what's actually a very simple result, which is mixing metaphors here, walking out of the cave. And but we're not going to be able to use the wrench or walk out of the cave effectively without the appropriate guidance.
Yeah. And that's it, without somebody else showing us, somebody else helping us move away the shadow or move away the preconception, that the knowledge that we think we have about how this works. Because that's it. Like I said, I could see the wrench, but I just couldn't understand when they kept saying, turn it around, turn it around. And, you know, I think about that, maybe like you say, with our minds. It's like, but no, I can see it. I understand this. And it's like, no, I don't, because I'm not seeing the shadow. I'm not seeing the right way to do it. And I can't believe that there's another way. And that's the first thing I have to do, is believe there's got to be another way. There is another way, and you just don't see it.
Another metaphor that comes to mind is those magic eye posters.
Yes, yes.
Which I think technically they're called stereograms. And I actually had some software in the first book that I wrote. I had some software that made stereograms, and so I made some geometric figures in a book about geometry and sacred geometry. And so I made this stereogram with 6 of these stellated dodecahedra is the technical term for these 3-dimensional shapes. And when you look at the page that has these images embedded in it, all you see is just a bunch of random black and white dots. But if you use, there's 2 black dots at the top of the page, and if you can line it up so that the two, one eye's focus on those 2 that way and the other's focused on that way, then all of a sudden there's a 3-dimensional object that just pops out at you. And that's how all the stereograms work, is they basically, you have to look beyond or through or past the superficial facade of what our mind wants to see as the reality. And we need Holy Spirit's help for that, metaphorically. So I think the magic eye posters, the stereograms, are really a good metaphor for that, because once you see it, it's like, that was there all along. How could I have missed it, kind of thing. But you have to kind of defocus on the surface that you're so accustomed to letting your eyes rest on, and essentially penetrating beyond that to a depth that isn't our normal mode of operation.
Right.
You're actually looking past the plane of the paper.
Well, and there's 2 interesting things about that. One is that the way people try to tell you to see it, you know, it's like you look at the instructions, and a lot of times the instructions have not helped. The instruction that finally helped me is when it said, soften your vision. Let your vision go a little blurry. Then I could do it. But when they were saying do this and do, you know, it was almost like the doing of it kept me from seeing it. But then the second issue, so part of it is just, once again, the instructions. Sometimes it needs to be said a different way, just like A Course in Miracles maybe comes at the right time with the right thing for the right person, and it didn't 20 years before that. But the other thing about those, what did you call
stereogram?
Yeah, is that once you experience and you know what it feels like, then you can do it again. But it's a very experiential thing. It's not intellectual.
Yeah, and that also ties into another idea in the Course that I think is in that 3rd volume, which is, you know, the Course doesn't aim at, you know, certainly, as Ken Walkman points out, is you can't get too far from the metaphysics. So we need, you know, at least a superficial or that's not even our word, but a you know, a foundation of you know, intellectual understanding of the Course's principles. But what the Course is aiming at is really an experience. And it even says, you know, universal theology is impossible, but the universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. And that's, I think, the experience of the peace that comes from consistently forgiving ourselves for all of our projections. And then those projections are kind of like those magic eye posters that we're projecting this facade out onto everyone and everything, instead of seeing all of Spirit in every piece of it holographically. We just see everything is divided up into these little inadequate, incomplete parts that are constantly doing battle with each other.
Mhm.
And we think we're one of those parts.
Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, it really is a great analogy for the forgiveness, because you can almost never talk yourself into forgiveness. But
Right.
if you feel it,
Mhm.
you feel it and you know what it feels like, then I think you can do it.
Yeah.
But you'll never convince the ego that it's a rational, logical thing to do.
No.
Because there is no rational, logical reason
Right.
other than you're in pain. But you get what I'm saying. But the feeling itself, just like with a person, once they've experienced something, they want to experience that again. And that's more compelling than the intellectual argument.
Exactly. Exactly. And which is why I think the course's whole motivational thrust is to just don't think you have to understand everything. It even says at the beginning of the workbook, just like, some of these things, you're going to question, and a lot of it you probably actively resist. Just do it anyway.
Right,
Go,
right.
just try it, see if you like it, and eventually, our resistance does, wear out, and and
Yes.
and we have these little glimpses of like, oh yeah, I wasn't fighting it. I was actually kind of peaceful. Hey, that's
That's
pretty good.
right.
I
That's
might have
right.
to try that again. What a
Yep.
concept. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want to, let's see, you read paragraph
I
3. How,
read three.
how about if
Uh-huh.
I'll read 4, and
Okay.
there's actually a lot in here. Okay.
Okay.
Here again is the paradox often referred to in the course. To say of myself I can do nothing is to gain all power. And yet it is but a seeming paradox. As God created you, you have all power. The image you made of yourself has none. The Holy Spirit knows the truth about you. The image you made does not. Yet, despite its obvious and complete ignorance, this image assumes it knows all things because you have given that belief to it. Such is your teaching and the teaching of the world that was made to uphold it. But the teacher, capital T, who, capital W, knows the truth has not forgotten it. His decisions bring benefit to all, being wholly devoid of attack, and therefore incapable of arousing guilt. And as the course points out in so many different ways, um, the the guilt is only because we think we pulled off the fracturing of perfect oneness. We think
Mhm.
we were able to take the creator's intrinsic unity and shatter it into these countless gazillion, little disconnected pieces. And even though we're not consciously aware of that, on some deep level, we think we pulled it off, pulled
Mhm.
off the impossible crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and what I'm sort of mesmerized by, or at least what's triggering me, is something I had mentioned to you before we started doing the recording today, was that it feels like this week or the last few weeks, a lot of this stuff has been coming up,
Mhm,
which has to do with, I mean, in some lingo, it's getting the ego out of the way.
mhm.
And a lot of times with non-course people talking about how do you let the universe flow through you and getting the ego out of the way. Well, that's just it, the paradox that it's talking about. As God created you, you have all power, but the image you made of yourself has none. And that's the thing. Once again, it almost has to be an experience, but we have made these egos that are so puny and tiny. And in fact, in the course it says you don't ask too much, you ask too little, because we're taking these little puppets, these little egos that we have created, and we're trying to make them magnificent. And what a joke.
Mhm,
And why can we not just rest upon, that's it, where the real power, the real source is coming from?
mhm.
Which a lot of times it seems to me, I use the analogy, whether talking about the universe to people that see it that way, or talking about the Holy Spirit with course people, it's like plugging in. I say with our cell phones, I don't go crazy because my cell phone has lost power. I just go plug it in. And if I could only do that as a person, just go, you know what? Just go plug in. That's all you need to do. You're not the source of the power, but when you're connected, when you know where the power is coming from, when you can connect to that, you've got everything you could possibly need.
Yeah.
And yet we're still kind of like these little cell phones trying to operate on our own and not be connected,
Uh,
or
yeah.
whatever it is. We we get all bent out of shape about thinking we are the electricity. And in some ways, yes, spiritually, maybe we are, but it's like, it's our connection to the source that is our power.
Exactly. And I think the Course emphasizes that we have to let Holy Spirit's energy or thoughts or whatever you want to, metaphor you want to use, flow through us, rather than depending on, this self-contained, isolated system. I'm reminded of, there's a place in Arizona where what do they call it? They make this large environment that was supposed to be self-contained and self-sustaining and didn't require any, it was the biosphere. That's what it was called.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
the plan was to see how long they could go without having any external support from, water, energy, food, any resources. They built this gigantic,
When you say gigantic, how big are you talking?
well, it's like, I don't know, maybe half an acre or something like that.
Okay.
It's pretty good size.
Yeah.
Maybe an acre. Anyway, we took a tour through it a few years back, and it's like a giant overgrown greenhouse, basically,
Right.
with living quarters and control systems and all kinds of stuff. And it didn't take very long. I think it was less than a year before they realized this is not going to be sustainable. But what a great metaphor for, like you say, like a cell phone. After a few days, it's just a nice looking paperweight.
Right.
but it's like we need to keep charged and keep connected, and the same thing true not only with the electricity, but in terms of the radio signals that go to and from the cell phone, whether it's Bluetooth or the wireless or the cell data. It's all of those signals then determine the functionality and the outcome of the experience that we have with it. Yeah. And of course the programming inevitably is sort of like a metaphor for which of the two thought systems. And the Holy Spirit's thought system is extremely simple but profound, and the ego's is ever increasing complexity. So we have different experiences with those two thought systems, huh?
Yeah. And like what you just, like, I was thinking when you were saying that is, once again, I keep referencing it, but I've been reading Ken's books on kindness. And I recognize, just like what you're talking about, one of the resistance, or why is it scary to kind of rely on the Holy Spirit, is even as I'm reading this book, I feel it. I'm kind of clenching it, because Ken is talking about kindness as, you don't have to think about what to say or do. If you're allowing the Holy Spirit to direct you, you're just going to do the kind thing. And I'm just like, I don't know, because I need to have something ready. I need to have like this little, this little pocket guide. This is kindness and this isn't kindness. And even as I was reading that, I recognized that feels kind of scary to me, to like just totally, almost like allowing yourself to fall off a cliff and somebody's going to catch you. How do I know something's going to be kind? I mean, are you sure? Are you sure it's going to be kind if you just like don't figure it out ahead of time? And, and once again, maybe it's because, how do you know when you're really connecting? Are you really not coming from ego? Have you really set that, part of yourself aside and said, I just want to be in service this way? And so truly, what somebody from the outside world, they may not have even judged it as kindness, whereas somebody else might have and said, you know what, that's exactly what I needed to hear. But that seems a little scary to go, okay, Holy Spirit, I'm going to go out on the stage without a script, because that's what it feels like. I'm going to go out on the stage without a script, and I'm just going to say what comes into my head. I'm going to rely on you to direct my actions in kindness. That seems a little scary because I like a script. And I just realized that as you were talking, that's part of the resistance right there. I want a script. Yeah. I want an assurance or something.
There's a couple of places in the Course that I think are pertinent. And one is the idea that we need to, like you say, we need to have it kind of figured out in advance. And it's sort of like, okay, I want the atonement, but and sure, I'll let Holy Spirit do it, but let me prepare myself for the atonement, essentially get it figured out so that Jesus or the Holy Spirit doesn't have to do any work. Basically, like thinking that, well, they can do some of it, but I need to somehow, figure some of it out. Well, no,
Mhm.
I mean, we don't. And then the what the Foundation for Inner Peace calls the prayer for atonement. Here only to be truly helpful. That one is really all about. I will be given what I need. I will be given the words and the thoughts, and I don't need to worry about what to say or what to do, because He who sent me will direct me. And,
Yeah.
so
But I find the only times I can really do that are when I'm in a situation where I truly don't know what to do.
yeah.
That's it. It's like, usually it's an emotional situation
Mhm, mhm.
or a traumatic situation. And I know I want to help, but I don't have the faintest idea what's really going to be helpful. And then I can kind of go, okay, you know, Holy Spirit, you better come up with something, because I'm clueless here. This is beyond my ability to figure out.
So in that case, it's actually helpful to have all the seeming support kicked out beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but on some levels, we should just remember that more often, because all these preparations that we think we have
Mhm.
don't necessarily work. And what I think is a kind thing to do is not necessarily a kind thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Deepening the trust by realizing that all of our alleged preparation may not be the whole
Yeah.
picture.
Well, and in fact, in the kind book, I'll bring this up because I can see the correlations right now, even to Russia and the Ukraine and a number of other things. Ken describes a couple that are working, I think, in a psychiatric hospital. But the hospital administration is taking advantage of the patients by keeping them as long as their insurance will pay.
Hmm.
So they determine not their diagnosis, but they determine their length of stay on how long their insurance pays for an inpatient hospitalization. And so these two doctors, therapists, I think they're doctors that are husband and wife, they're very upset about what's happening with the administration. So they side with the patients and they're trying to get that changed. And Ken comes along and basically says, well, you need to side with the administration. I mean, you can't help the patients if you're teaching them separation. And I remember, even as I'm reading it, I'm like, what? I mean, it's like, okay, Ken, I get it, but, and I still admit, I've read that little book a couple times, and every time I get to that, I'm still like, but how can they side with the wrongdoers, but Ken just keeps pointing out, if you're teaching separation, if that's your point, is it's us against them, you're not really helping the patients. On a spiritual level, you're not taking them where they need to go if you're teaching a win-lose situation versus how do we make this a win-win situation.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's so hard, because how often do we get ourselves into those situations where that's it, we want to fight on one side or the other, and we don't know how to make it a win-win, or to see it as we should all be on the same team. How do we do that? And like right now, you see the world lining up pretty much on one side or the other in terms of Russia or the Ukraine, and it's us against them, no matter which side you're on. And how do you see what you think is the bad guys or the ones you want to be separated from? How do you close that gap?
Good
And I don't know
rhetorical
the answer,
question. Yeah.
but I know we should. I mean, that's, in fact, that's something that just keeps coming to mind, is those two psychiatrists and how Ken told them, as long as you're fighting, as long as you see a separation, the good guys and the bad guys, you're not winning.
Mhm.
And so how do you do that?
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned a little while ago is we need to use what works for us, and kind of build the muscle, so to speak, or
Mhm.
start with the things that are seemingly easier, and then work up to the things that are more challenging, and then that's
Yeah.
the process of generalizing, right?
Yeah. Well, and in general, I think in so many ways, if whatever's going on in our lives, if we can focus on shared interests,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, every time, like, if, what is the win-win? What is the shared interest? The minute we kind of steer too far away from shared interests, we're not going in the right direction usually.
Yeah, yeah. It's true. That's
You know,
true.
how can we all win? How can we get what we want? Or how can we make this? Yeah, I don't know.
Which was probably Ken's point in that
Yeah,
situation. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I wonder if either one of those people slapped him.
Good question. Good question.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, I know my mouth would have just been, what is he telling them? I think that would have been hard for me to swallow, but I also know spiritually, metaphysically, he's absolutely right. If you're creating the separation, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Perpetrating us and them.
That's
Okay,
true.
did
That's
you
true.
want to read any more? I know we're
Wait, wait,
probably
wait.
getting close to
Yeah,
our
we've
hour.
been about an hour, I think. I'm not sure exactly how, but yeah, how about one more paragraph?
And the one more paragraph is 5, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Who assumes a power that he does not possess is deceiving himself. Yet to accept the power given him by God is but to acknowledge his creator and accept his gifts. And his gifts have no limit. To ask the Holy Spirit to decide for you is simply to accept your true inheritance. Does this mean that you cannot say anything without consulting him? No, indeed. That would hardly be practical. And it is the practical with which this course is most concerned. If you have made it a habit to ask for help when and where you can be confident that wisdom will be given you when you need it. Prepare for this each morning. Remember God when you can throughout the day. Ask the Holy Spirit's help when it is feasible to do so, and thank Him for His guidance at night. And your confidence will be well founded indeed. Simple.
Easy peasy, right?
Yeah, easy. Easy peasy.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
As the joke uh, goes, right? But
right.
and I also try to remind myself that from our perspective, and the course uses a number of different metaphors. The brick wall, the stone, the mountain, the impenetrable barrier. All of those metaphors of something that's just an impossible obstacles that we've made, seen from the other side, from the Holy Spirit's perspective, is nothing.
Right.
And that's why a lot of the metaphors that are used from that angle are, letting a button fall through a cloud, things
Right.
like that, or a feather. It's like, yeah, maybe the cloud might slow it down a little, but the feather is going to, end up on the earth,
Mhm.
sooner or later. And so, try not to fight yourself too much, and just know that it'll happen.
Yeah.
And that ease, I think, is really what allows us to allow Holy Spirit to speak through us, whether we're talking to seemingly someone else or just in our own self-talk, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good stuff. And thank you as always. See, I also enjoy our conversations, and
Yeah, I've missed you.
well, it's been a
I
little
mean, and it's not your
hiatus.
fault,
Yeah,
but yeah, I've just been so wrapped up in
yeah,
my move, which seemed to take forever.
yeah.
Or I shouldn't say the move itself, but the adjustment
Sure, sure.
has
Yeah,
not been easy.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. All righty.
So,
Well, thanks again, and I'll post this on the web, and so that people can enjoy
okay.
a conversation, and look forward to the next one.
Okay. I do have to ask you a question. Have you been watching Resident Alien?
No.
Well, I highly recommend it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it's the kind of show, it's on S or Science. No, what is it on? I don't know what channel it's on.
Well,
Sci-fi,
I'll
maybe.
look for it. Yeah.
Sci-fi. But it's one of those things you can probably get it on demand. It's in season 2, but the seasons are only like maybe 10 shows.
Okay. Okay.
And I didn't watch it because when I saw the ads for it, it looked like kind of a silly sitcom.
Yeah.
But it's not a silly sitcom, I don't think.
Okay.
But I recommend it. I think you've got a quirky sense of humor.
I do.
And you do need a quirky sense of humor to think this is funny.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
because it is an alien that has come to destroy the planet, but he crashes and loses some of his equipment. And so the things that go on, I mean, there are funny things, but there's also pretty serious things. But it's also very insightful
Okay.
because of an alien trying to figure out human psychology. It can't help but be insightful because of that. And I never watch an episode that I don't think, okay, that was worth learning, that was something. But it is also just very funny.
Sounds good.
So, and a little deeper than you'd ever think it is.
Yeah.
The story themes are just a little bit deeper than you think they're going to be. And there's multiple themes. And like I said, in some ways they're not lightweight because they deal with murder, and a number of other things. So, but in any case, I would think that would be a show that you would like. I don't know about your wife because I don't know her, but yeah, I think you would like the show. But if you watch the first couple and you don't like it, then you probably aren't going to like it.
Okay.
I mean, because I think it kind of grabs you right away or not at all.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bruce.
Thank you. It's always
I
a
hope
pleasure.
everything's going great for you.
Yep. I'm going to stop the recording now and